welcome to this onboarding video showing how to install the Treble SDK into a Microsoft machine using a Linux subsystem. So when you get added to your organization's account with Treble, you're going to receive an onboarding email that looks like this. And you're going to have a couple of links here. The very first one will take you to the password setting page. But since I've already set my passport, we're going to skip that and go straight to the Getting Started with the SDK link. Now, this is going to take you to a landing page, which your first time visiting, you will need to provide your username, which is the email address that you received the onboarding email to, and the password that you just set. And once you log in, you're going to see this page here, where you can go ahead and download your SDK credentials, as well as the SDK installation guide, or installation package. And while we're here, we're also going to nip over to the documentation and download an example notebook called Your First Simulation, just so we have something to work with. Now, while we're online, we will also go ahead and download a code interface, an IDE. Now, of course, you can use any software you'd like to work with Python, but if you have to choose something and you don't know what, we recommend going with Visual Studio Code, as it comes with a lot of useful extensions and functionalities to help you interface with Python and the SDK. So we'll just go ahead and download that installer as well. And we'll pop over to the downloads file, where we see we have first our credential file, second the wheel file for the installation, the sample notebook, and the VS Code installer, which we'll go ahead and do now. Okay, and let's launch Visual Studio Code, where we can see that everything is as it should be. Now, let's proceed to creating the Windows subsystem with Linux. In this case, I have the Windows PowerShell open as an administrator. If you need to find it for yourself the first time, go to the search bar, and if you type PowerShell, you can find it here. Depending on your organization's security settings, you might be able to run this as a regular user. However, many corporations are going to have content controls on computers. So if yours is one, you might need to run as an administrator with the help of your local IT expert. So I've got my administrator PowerShell window open here, and we will get started with the subsystem installation by typing WSL -- install. And it's going to take a moment to install the WSL platform itself, and then it will... a specified logon session does not exist. So it took me a moment off screen, but the error message I was getting about a specified logon session not existing was solved by going into the Windows feature option, which you can find by, again, searching in the search bar at the bottom of the screen, and specifically activating the Windows subsystem for Linux. And once this was activated and installed, I got this particular pop-up that asks me to restart the changes, and this is precisely what we expect to see. Now, in this case, because I'm on a managed computer, I needed the help of my own IT professional in order to specifically allow me to turn on this particular Windows feature. So I'll stop this recording and restart the PC, and you can join me in just a moment when we've finished rebooting. Once we reboot our computer, we can proceed with the next step. So we're going to open Windows PowerShell and install Ubuntu. Requires an update to its kernel component. Okay. right, so we need to run an update, WSL.exe update. And this should help fix the issues that we're having. And for this, again, we'll need the administrator help. So it's good to be friendly with your IT people if you have a controlled device like I do. All right, great. So now if we try to install Ubuntu again, it looks like we're downloading and things should hopefully be going according to plan now. Great. So now, we have success. So the Windows subsystem for Linux has opened, which is great. We can now see some questions or options for working with the WSL. And this means, of course, that we can now proceed with our installation. So if we want to launch Ubuntu, we can come here, wsl.exe, Ubuntu. We're just following the instructions given. And it will take a moment when we first do this. I have to create a user account, and it doesn't take uppercase letters, so we'll go with the lowercase version of my name. And of course, we have to set a password for this. Great. So now this window of the PowerShell is fully operating within Ubuntu as we'd like to do, or as we'd like to see. So now we can proceed to set things up for the SDK. So if we come down to network locations inside the File Explorer, we can see now that Linux has been added as one of the drives that we can access. And if we click into Ubuntu, we now see the entire set of directories associated with our Linux installation, the same way you would have inside the Windows installation here on the left. So in this case, if we want to see our home directory, we find home, and there's my username, and now we have the basic home landing screen. Now, in order to start the installation of the SDK, we have to copy over information from the downloads that we made previously. Now, first things first, we need to create a folder that will hold the credential file. So we're going to call that .config, and inside .config, we'll create another folder that's called Treble. And if we come in here, we can grab our credential file and copy it into Treble. And also, while we're inside Linux, again, we're going to go up, and I'm just going to create a folder to sort of hold the installation package as well as our initial simulation to be tidy about it. Of course, this can live anywhere inside your Linux subsystem, but we're just going to put it here for the time being. So we'll call this Treble SDK. Oops. SDK. And if we come back to the downloads, we'll copy your first simulation and the wheel file in here. Now, if we go back to that command line, which is running in Linux, and I press or write code, that is going to launch Visual Studio Code, which we installed earlier, but it is specifically going to launch it within the Linux subsystem. So you'll see here at the bottom that they've noticed the WSL, and they are recommending that we install an extension, and we absolutely do need to install this. So we'll go ahead and allow that installation to take place. Now also what we need to do is we need to go and find our folder that we saved all of these things in. So open folder, oops, nope, that's the wrong one. Went out of sequence here. So in order for us to be sure that we're inside Linux and Linux's file system rather than Microsoft's file system, we're going to come up here, oops, hit Control-Shift-P on the keyboard, and we want to suggest or connect to WSL as is suggested. So now that we've done that, you can see down here in the lower left-hand corner that it's opening the connection to Linux, which is exactly what we want to see. So now if we come into Explorer and press Open Folder, we are, as you can see, in the home directory of Sarah Beth Mullins, which is that home folder of the Linux distribution, and you can see that the Treble SDK directory is already here. So we'll select that and click OK. And yes, I trust the authors. So you'll see now we have our first simulation example notebook, and we also have the installation file. So if we click here, you'll see now that Visual Studio recognizes that we are using Python, and it's suggesting that we install the Python extension as well, which we want to do. And the other one, while we're at it, oops, that we want to get is the Jupyter extension. All right, now while those are installing, we need to do a little bit of housekeeping inside of Linux and inside that window. So going back to the PowerShell, we're going to make sure that things are entirely up to date inside our Linux install. So we're going to write sudo apt update. And it'll take a second to update here. And we'll know it's done once the green and blue line shows up in the Treble or in the PowerShell again. And now that we've done that, we are going to check what version of Python we're currently running. So according to this, we're in 3.12, which means that we can move on to the next step, which is updating and installing Python to support the SDK. This is pretty simple. We just write sudo apt install, and then we want to install 3 separate packages. So the first one is Python 3. Then we want to specify Python 3 pip and Python 3 virtual environment. Yes, we want to continue. And again, it will take a little bit to get here. Now that that's done, we're going to move to the next step. Now, we're already quite in deep, technically speaking, and we're going to add another layer of complexity. However, this one is strictly optional. We recommend the creation and use of a virtual environment to help manage the Python packages inside the SDK, especially if you're going to be running multiple projects, which might have different Python package requirements. Using a virtual environment is a way to make sure that you've sandboxed each of your projects from a code basis. So in order to do that, we're going to do the following commands. Python 3 make a virtual environment, and we are going to specify that this should live here. So it's going to take a second to think about it, and once it's done, we'll of course get prompted for a new command, and now we will activate this environment by running the following command. Source, oops, here, venv, treble SDK, bin, activate. Now you'll know it's successful because the name of our virtual environment, the Treble SDK, has been highlighted here. Now now we're getting relatively close to being up and running. Now, coming back into Visual Studio Code, we're going to open a new terminal, and we're going to follow the same steps that we used in the command line to activate the virtual environment that we just created. So, source .venv. That's the wrong direction. .venv. Treble SDK bin activate. And once again, as in the PowerShell, if you look at the terminal here, you can see that the name of our virtual environment is now showing up at the far left of the line, telling us that the environment is now active. So within this virtual environment, we're going to go ahead and install the Treble SDK. So first of all, we are going to look at where we are currently, and we are in the Treble SDK project. And we see, if we were to list all the files, that the SDK install file is here. So to install this, we're going to run pip install Treble, and if you use tab, it will autocomplete for the name of the install file. So we'll run that. And it will take a couple of minutes here to download all of the packages associated with it. Now is a perfect time to take a quick screen break or answer some emails. All right, now we'll just go ahead and install one more package here, pip install Jupyter. And that will allow us to run our simulation notebook within the virtual environment. All right, now that that's all set up, we just need a couple of final steps in VS Code to finish this initialization. Okay, so now that we have fully installed the Treble SDK and the virtual environment is running, we can go ahead and select the kernel that is going to be running this notebook. Now in my case, I have already discovered my installation of Python that is associated with the environment called Treble SDK. But if this isn't showing up for you immediately, what you'll see instead when you click in the upper right corner, select interpreter, is you will find this Python environments or existing Jupyter server option. And if you go into it, you'll see whatever installations you have of Python, and in my case, the virtual environment is showing up. If it doesn't show up, you have an additional step, and what you'll do there is do Control-Shift-P, Python select interpreter, enter interpreter path, find, and then you want to move out of the folder that has your project files in it to the folder where your virtual environment lives. And so we've gone in, we can see Treble SDK, the name of the environment. And if we go into bin and then scroll down to Python 3.12, that will automatically detect the name of the virtual environment and select the kernel. So now it's the moment of truth. We're going to run this cell, which will initialize the SDK for the very first time. Okay, so now that that has finished running, we can see that there was a minor issue in the installation. So it looks like the package of matplotlib, which is one of the plotting functions that the SDK relies on, created a directory where it wasn't expecting to. But overall, the SDK package was a successful import because this message down here at the bottom, the SDK package is up to date, did display. So thank you very much for joining us today. Hopefully this has answered all of your questions about installing the SDK on a Windows subsystem for Linux machine. Of course, if you have any questions, your number one point of contact should be your local IT expert. If after talking with the local IT people, you still have questions, of course you can find our documentation online. If you go to docs.treble.tech, you can find our online documentation. And within the Treble SDK, you can find our most up-to-date installation guide. If after reviewing the installation guide you still have further questions, you can come down to the support page and find the up-to-date support email address if you have any questions that your previous investigations were unable to answer. So like I said, thank you so much for joining us and happy simulating.